Welcome to the Rainbow Optimist Club Southwestern Ontario Speakers Panel for the Trans Day of Visibility 2021. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional lands that we're gathered on, and that's the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Lenni Lenape people. I want to say a big thank you, Chi-miigwech, to all those who stewarded the land before we came and continue to steward the land for us. So, Chi-miigwech. Today we're celebrating Trans Day of Visibility, and it's a really great time to profile some of the important leaders in our trans community, shed some light on resources for people that might be exploring their gender identity. So I want to start off by introducing somebody that's no stranger to TVDSB and actually started one of the first GSAs at Central Elgin Collegiate in St. Thomas, now works as a nurse and is very busy with the COVID vaccination site. So I really want to thank Devon for taking a moment and coming to join us. Hey, Devon, how are you?
Hi, Andrew. I'm good.
Tired, I bet. I know it's a busy time, but on behalf of everybody, I know I can say that proudly. Thank you for everything you do. We really appreciate it, and you're really one of those heroes in the situation. So thank you. Before we get started, I want to tell us a little bit about your history, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how did you start the first GSA group in TVDSB?
So I'm in my mid-30s now. So this was like 20 years ago. And at Central, I think I was the only out human in St. Thomas at the time, in the early 2000s. And I really wanted to start something up because I'd heard about it happening in bigger communities, like in Toronto. And I had to find a teacher that would be willing to do it. And none of the teachers wanted to take it on board, except for Lori. And Lori jumped on in and was fantastic. And we started that in 2001, I want to say.
Wow.
Right. So it's been going for a while.
Yeah. And that's led to so many other schools. Shout out to Lori. She's amazing, and continues to do so much work with students. So you started a GSA. You're long past that now. So jump forward. You're a nurse now. What's it like being, well, first of all, how do you identify? And then what's it like living in that community now in St. Thomas? It's changed a lot in 20 years.
Yeah. So I mostly identify as a trans man. In certain circles with people that are similar to myself, I identify as gender fluid, gender queer. It can be really hard to explain that to people that aren't part of the community. So generally, I just make it easier for people to understand and just go with I identify as he, him. To my friends and loved ones, it's just more of a I'm Devon, right? That it's not, gender's not so much tied with who I am.
Right. And so that's a big thing about Trans Day of Visibility, because there isn't one experience in what it means to be trans. There's lots of people that have different experiences. And I find in the decade of work I've done with the trans community that's often a barrier for trans people sometimes, because people do lump all trans people together often. And it just becomes this like, this really hard, because you don't identify or your situation is so much different than that somebody else that you just keep getting lumped in with. So tell us about that, and do you find that that's getting better, and what can cisgender people like myself do to help with that?
I think the big thing that people need to understand is that everyone's experience is different, and no one person can speak for the community, which is which has been done a lot in the past, that certain people will speak to their experience, but put it on others. And it is really important to remember that everyone's experience is very different. A lot of it is linked to how they've been brought up, what their views are, what their trauma is, basically even their education, right? Like, how much do they know? Because the more education you have on the subject, the further you can actually understand who you are yourself and have words to put to it. A lot of the time it's just very confusing, and you just feel different, right? That there aren't words to really tell anyone why or how, or basically what you're trying to. It's really hard to say what you're feeling, especially when you're younger, because there's a lot of feels happening, right? That it's in order to identify one and pick it out, it takes a long time, right? Like, I'm 36, and it took me until my 30s to really get a good grasp on who I am and what I stand for, and like what I love about myself.
Yeah. So I guess if we're speaking to, and we are speaking to some kids that might be questioning themselves and might have friends that are questioning, what's that look like to be a good ally to those people that are questioning? Are there things that are, that cisgender people do that are problematic, like non-trans people that are problematic, and that are things that we can kind of, I know there are a lot, but I'm just thinking of a couple key things. Misgendering is an obvious one, using the wrong pronouns. But are there any other things that you've come across?
I think it's the most important things is if you do make an error in pronouns or in dead naming, that you don't make a big deal about it, that you move on, like you apologize and you move on and you just do better. And the other thing is that's really important that people need to understand is that it's fluid. Gender is fluid, and to some people it is very important that they identify as transmasculine or transfeminine, and that is very important to their identity, whereas other people, it changes. It can change by the day, right? Or really it's just how they're feeling and how they're handling it and where they're at that moment. That if somebody feels comfortable to tell you that they identify as he, him that day, that if that changes the next day, right, you're welcome to ask them, just make sure they're feeling okay about stuff and that they're feeling safe, but don't make a big deal out of it, because gender is a construct. The best you can do is just go with what they're saying and just be a compassionate, sympathetic human being, right?
Yeah, and the best you can, right? I do want to just pick up, you mentioned the word dead naming, so that would be using someone's name, maybe they were given at birth, that they don't use anymore, right?
Yeah, right. The dead naming is it can be very disrespectful, as well as you should never out anyone, right? That's also huge. That happens a lot, right? Because it's gossip. It's the hot goss. It's the spilling the tea, right? That you hear something and so you're like, oh my god, that's just a big no. It's because especially like growing up in St. Thomas, my house was egged for a long time. That it's still not a super acceptable thing here. That a lot of people, like even myself, in most situations will still fly in the stealth realm for safety. That
right.
you have to be aware of that, right? That you don't want to announce something that puts someone in a very unsafe place or gets them kicked out of their house, right?
Right. And also going back to that, the journey is ongoing for a lot of people. So It may not be where they're starting or ending. They could be on that journey. But you mentioned kind of flying stealth sometimes. And that's one thing I think people also don't understand is not everybody that's in the trans community wants to identify as being in the trans community. There are lots of trans and non-binary people that don't necessarily carry the flag every day and talk about being trans. They'll identify as, one gender or another or neither, but don't necessarily want to always be outed as trans, as you said. So is that your experience? You identify as a trans male normally, but do you find that that's a big thing in rural communities?
I do. I also find that, like, especially, I think more so with older generations, it's more so they don't want to be identified as trans, that to them, they just are. Right, so they are a he, they are a she, that they don't identify as trans because to them that's not their experience. To them that is just how they were born, and they've just worked on making how they feel is how they present. Right, so it's a tricky question.
Yeah. So, well, let's switch topics. I want to. I know you've got to go. You're busy. So, but I do want to ask. You mentioned your teacher Lori, and starting the GSA. So obviously that's a great resource for some kids. We know that GSAs though aren't necessarily because you can be outed by even attending a GSA or a conference or any of those things. So, are there any other resources you can suggest to young people that might be questioning that maybe don't have a GSA, don't have a Lori to go to?
Yeah, there's the amount of stuff out there on the internet right now is right. Like it blows my mind. There's a lot of really good groups that you can find through Facebook, through Insta, Discord. Discord has some really great communities. I'm supposed to be learning about something. I don't know what it's called now. It's some sort of app that you can have conversation. I want to call it the sandbox, but I don't think that's what it is. Something like that. But the community online is huge. That you will have people that will support you. Even if they're not able to be there in person, especially during COVID, right?
Yeah, for sure.
One thing that I did really want to touch on about trans day visibility is that for those of us who can be visible, I think it's important that people know that we're out there, but at the same time, you have to be able to do it in a safe way. That a lot of people will tell you that you need to be visible so that younger people that don't pass as well can feel safer, which in some ways is true. But at the same time, if you're not in a safe space to be visible, if you can still just use your voice as an ally, and you don't have to out yourself, you don't have to put yourself in that sort of situation, but at least you can stand up to like what you believe is right.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's so well put because, thankfully people like yourself are able to talk and express, but not everybody feels comfortable or safe or has had the best experience, or maybe they're still questioning. And so it's great to have out trans people speaking out, but it's also great for those that can't to find your community, use it as a day to find your community, support where you can, for allies to support where you can. Lastly, is there anything else you want to add about this day? Trans Day of Remembrance is a really important day for the trans community, obviously honoring all the lives we lose every year. But Trans Day of Visibility, I see as such a positive thing to shed light on all the amazing, talented people that fall into the trans umbrella. what does it mean to you? What does Trans Day of Visibility mean to you?
It mostly it's just a day to celebrate who you are and who you love and the people that love you. It's a day to celebrate that there's a community out there of people that are like-minded, that feel the same way that you do, that have similar experiences to the way that you do, that exist in almost a different universe, that the societal pressures that are put on everyone to be who they are, that we have our own experience and we celebrate that and we love ourselves and we love each other for who we are and not who everyone tells us to be.
And that's a good message for everyone, not just the trans community. But thank you so much for everything. Thank you for having the courage 20 years ago to start that GSA with Lori. And gosh, I wish when I was back in school I had a GSA. So kids out there, make sure you attend your GSA, touch base with your teacher, and look for those resources. Thanks so much, Devon. I really appreciate it. And for all you're doing with the COVID vaccination, you're a true hero. Thank you so much.
No problem, Andrew. Good to talk to you.
So my next guest is Sal Hill. I'm really excited to introduce you to Sal. Sal is a former Rainbow Youth Leadership Bursary Award winner and graduated back in about 2017 from Thames Valley District School Board, attended Beale and some other schools as well. Sal has been a great advocate in our community for many years and has worked with me at Pride London Festival and doing speakers panels like this one. So I want to introduce you to Sal. Sal, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been doing pretty good.
All things considered, given quarantine.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, happy Trans Day of Visibility. I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Let us know where you grew up and a little bit about yourself and how you identify.
So I grew up on the Oneida Reservation, and it's about half an hour from London. I went to school through the Thames Valley District School Board from grade 7 up until my graduation in alternative schooling in 2017. And my connection to the Trans Day of Visibility would definitely be my identity as a two-spirit person. I do consider myself to fall underneath the trans non-binary identity, and my pronouns that I use are he, him, and she, hers.
So either one, which is unique. Some people identify by one, some identify by both, some use they, them. So let's stop there for a second. Why do you think pronouns are so important? Because I think that's one thing, getting somebody, not misgendering somebody, not using dead names, and using the correct pronouns are some of the easiest ways non-trans people or cisgender people can be good allies. So why is that so important?
It's really important because it just comes down to just basic respect of a person. Just basic respect and human decency. It's something that it really can make the biggest difference to someone, like changing someone's day and or helping alleviate someone's dysphoria. Like it's something that does seem very small, but does mean a lot to the individual.
So let's talk about your experience in TVDSB. I was just talking to Devon about how, some people are really lucky to have a great teacher. Some people have really supportive parents. Some don't, unfortunately. So what are your tips for people, for kids watching that might be questioning their gender identity and are looking for support?
I would definitely say that they're definitely going to all of your schools, GSA and Rainbow clubs, or even just connecting with your other peers, because there is a big chance that your peers are also going through a lot of similar things as you, and just talking and being open can go a long way. there and like it just like connection with your community is the biggest thing I could say and specifically like reaching out and like doing like your own like research into like in connecting to the club your like local clubs and um local youth support groups. I know a big one that has helped me was like when I was in Beale was the Rainbow Raiders group, as well as a separate group which I attended a couple times called Open Closet, which was really lovely. They were one of the first places that I felt like I could first be really open about my gender and sexuality differences.
And that's so important, is finding a space where you can express yourself, be yourself. I'm so glad you mentioned Rainbow Raiders because they're an amazing GSA, just one of the amazing GSAs. But Open Closet too, it's such a great resource for kids. So all of our resources are actually on rainbowoptimistclub.com/resources. And we'll provide links to that as well so people can get that. And we're going to talk to Elliot Duvall from Trans London as well, because they have some really great youth groups as well too. So I want to talk a little bit about what Trans Day of Visibility means to you. Why do you think this day is so important? Why do you think that we should take a moment as trans people and non-trans people to celebrate today?
I think it's really important to celebrate today because to celebrate the life and success of living trans people and showing and being open and honest about who you are is so important, especially in these times where it's like it's in a very big hurdle like there's been more and more trans people like more visible like celebrity trans people coming out, and it's very important to be open and honest about who you are and like celebrating the successes and not only like the tragedies and like hardships that do so surround trans existence. I think it's important to broadcast that there is like a life that you can live full of like love, happiness, and acceptance.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do focus too much on the negative experiences and not the positive. And I think that's what we wanted to do this for, is to talk about the really great positive stories. There are unfortunately a lot of heartbreak, but we have Trans Day of Remembrance where we do focus a lot on that. So I want to talk just back to kind of growing up in TVDSB before we were there any specific challenges you found growing up, or flags that teachers and students could be watching for to make the schools a more accepting place overall, not only for trans individuals but for two-spirit individuals too? I think there's a lot of learning to be done there too.
I do think the best thing that can be done is just opening up, or just it's like for having like the teachers and staff to open up their minds to education as well, like and to recognize that that a lot of the youth in their care are like going through very like detrimental times, and like where it's important that for them to be it's important to be nurtured and like accepted and like uplifted during those times. And it can be very hard to especially when you have a well-meaning teacher who doesn't quite understand your identity too well. So just like opening up more resources and education for yourself and like to your students could be a very good stepping stone, and particularly in regards to Two-Spirit youth is researching on the history and recognizing that it is not just a sexuality or a gender. It is both, and also neither. It's more so for the spirituality and the role and the histories with it, and that it's connected to. It's a word to replace, or like this an umbrella term used to for any like for most LGBT Indigenous people to claim if they're so comfortable with it. It's an umbrella term.
Yeah, and as you said, not everybody uses it. It's an umbrella term, and we have a lot more learning to do. So, thank you, Sal, for enlightening us, and happy Trans Day of Visibility. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course, it's been great. Oh, happy Trans Day of Visibility.
All right, my next guest is somebody I love very much and has done a ton of work in this community. Elliot Duvall is the coordinator for Trans London and has done a ton of work with PFLAG as well. So, Elliot, thank you for joining me and taking a bit of time.
You're welcome.
We were just joking. I almost wore the same shirt as you. I literally have the same shirt on standby. So I'm glad that didn't happen. That would be faux pas. Happy Trans Day of Visibility, Elliot.
Thank you.
So introduce yourself to everybody watching. Who are you and how do you identify, Elliot?
I am Elliot Duvall. I identify as a trans guy, trans dude, trans whatever, and just mostly Elliot. I also go by Dad. Yeah, a few other nicknames, but that's
Yeah, you have a wonderful wife, Krista, and a beautiful daughter, Paisley.
Yeah.
And you have created such a wonderful, loving home, and really one of acceptance, which is amazing. And you put all that work into Trans London. Tell me a little bit about what Trans London does. It's really a social group, but the network has grown. People have found a lot of support in Trans London.
It's grown huge. So we're well over 700 members now. I've kind of stopped looking because we keep growing so fast, it seems. But yeah, Trans London is a social group. We used to, before the world changed, we used to meet once a month at a local place, and it was very safe, inclusive. Anybody can come from. We had the youngest. I think at one time the youngest was 6, all the way up to 80-something-year-old, and everybody in between. And it's for people who identify as trans, non-binary, friends, family members. As long as you were somebody who was a safe person, and if you needed support, or if you knew somebody in the family that was coming out, and you just came and you hung out, you played games, you talked, but now online, we have such a huge network. It has really turned into people being able to help each other. So if somebody writes on our Facebook page and they have a question, or they need a doctor, or they need support that way, we have so many people now who will respond and say, here are my ideas, or here's this doctor, or don't go to that doctor, or these are the best doctors. So it's really turned out to be amazing. It used to just be 1 or 2 people, but now we have many, many people who respond all the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been lucky to be a member of Trans London for quite a few years. On the social side of it, before COVID, going to events, planning events for Pride, that kind of thing. But the online, seeing the posts, it could be something as simple as, I really need a new spring jacket. I've changed my identity since last year, and I need a spring jacket. Does anybody have a good spot? Anybody want to swap something? But there is that medical aspect too. People are asking, and then there's lots of questions like, my child is doing this. Is that normal, or what is normal? All things. So it's a really great opportunity. The other one I don't want to miss because that's more social and finding that, and yes, you can find the support, but PFLAG is really kind of the key to all support, and especially for our trans community.
Yes, PFLAG is amazing. PFLAG not only has, they have quite a few groups now. So PFLAG is a support group. They have the parents room. Then they also have the room that's called the Queerdos room. It's all community based for people out in the community. Then they have the parents, or not the parents, the partner support group. So this has been amazing for people who are in relationships with other people who identify as whatever. And it's a safe space that everyone can come and talk to. And then they also have 2 youth rooms. So it started out with 1, I think about almost 2 years ago, and now we're up to 2. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's so great. And I've heard so many success stories of, people finding PFLAG at, Pride, or they've called up, Krista or Lori or any of the people involved in PFLAG, and they find instant community. It's
Yeah.
kind of nice. This virtual thing is, in a way, it sucks we can't gather, but it also has been able to extend some of those communities and reach out. I think it's been given some people a chance to reach out privately too, which has got to be really good for autonomy. So,
Absolutely.
what does Trans Day of Visibility mean to you? Because we plan behind the scenes, we plan Trans Day of Remembrance for a number of years together, and it's always a very somber day. Lots of hugs, lots of tears. It's really a powerful day in the trans community. But on the flip side, Trans Day of Visibility is such a fun, cool day to celebrate all the great things that trans and non-binary people do. So what does it mean to you? What do you like about this day?
I guess the thing that I like about trans visibility is that it's a day that I feel like I can be me, and not that I'm not on a regular day, but that it's a day that like people who know that I'm trans, like everybody knows that I'm trans, just about everybody knows that I'm trans, but it's a day that they can see that it says trans visibility right there, and then they can say, hey, I appreciate you, or I love you, or thanks for being awesome. And that means the most, I think, to me, because I kind of feel not lost in society anymore. I guess.
Yeah, right. And then I think the other cool thing, and I want to thank you, because when you step up and share your story and do all this work, you're giving voice, as Devon said earlier, to all of those people that don't necessarily feel like they can have a voice right now. They don't feel safe. Maybe they're still questioning, but safety is so key. And so if you are able to speak out, do so. And if you can't, do something privately to support our trans community.
Yes.
Yeah. So, to wrap up, I want to say, if anybody wants to find out more information about Trans London or PFLAG, is Facebook, socials, are those kind of the best spots to go?
It would absolutely be the best spot, because I don't know the address, like the email straight away for PFLAG, but you just have to search Trans London, and it will go straight to us. And there's a few membership questions you ask, that we ask that you fill out, and then you get approved. And then same with PFLAG. Once you connect with PFLAG that way, you'll be able to connect anybody that you want. Like you can message them, and then they'll get back to you.
So it's a private group, so you don't have to be outed by joining it. And it really is, you do monitor it very frequently so that it is as safe a space as can be. Obviously, there's always going to be people out there that say something, but it is private, so it's a safer space.
It is absolutely safe. There's 3 of us that moderate it, and we're online a lot. Like I work overnights a lot of times, and so overnight there's usually a monitor that's able to get to things that might get posted or questions that are asked, and then throughout the day we have 2 other people who monitor, but it's so amazing because if somebody posts something that's either questionable or if they need help, we've had a lot of people who've this has been a hard year for everybody. So we've had a lot of people who've needed a lot of assistance. And so somebody will tag me or somebody else right away, and we're able to talk to them. So yeah, it's good. We have a lot of people in the community who care about everybody else.
I know it sure is a family. And I think people don't understand how massive and awesome the trans community is, but like you have a private group in London with over 700 members. It's not a small community. It's a vibrant community with amazing people like you. Thank you, Elliot, for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Have a great Trans Day of Visibility. Hope you get spoiled rotten.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Devon and Sal and Elliot. This is a day to celebrate Trans Day of Visibility, celebrate all those who fall under that umbrella. I really want to thank Jennifer Randall for providing all of the ASL interpretation for tonight as well. And thank you to the Thames Valley District School Board for partnering with us, and also to all of our community partners. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Happy Trans Day of Visibility.